Welcome back to the LilWeird Podcast. I'm your host, Jane. In the last episode, we explored the extraordinary apparitions experienced by Teresita Castillo and the profound connection to Saint Therese of Lisieux. We delve into the divine messages and the awe-inspiring encounters that transform a quiet Carmelite monastery into a site of spiritual wonder. Today, we continue our journey with part 2 of this fascinating tale. We turn our attention to the miraculous shower of rose petals that fell from the heavens in 1948, captivating the faithful and confounding skeptics. These petals, some said to bear holy images, spark a wave of devotion and wonder. But the story doesn't end there. We'll also explore the Church's intense scrutiny and eventual suppression of these events. Despite the initial rejection, the case was reignited decades later by dedicated believers who sought to uncover the truth behind the miracles. Join me as we dive into the miraculous shower of petals, the Church's response, and the determined efforts to reopen the case. We'll examine how faith and controversy intertwine in this remarkable story. Welcome to part 2 of the miraculous mysteries of the apparitions and showers of petals in Lipa on the LilWeird Podcast. Let's continue our exploration. After the apparitions of Mary to Teresita Castillo in Lipa, another miraculous event began to unfold, capturing the imagination and faith of many. On November 11, 1948, rose petals began to fall from the sky, not just within the confines of the convent but also in the surrounding areas. This phenomenon had been occurring inside the convent, but when the petals appeared outside, the event transformed into a public spectacle. News of these miraculous showers quickly spread far and wide. Inside the convent, the rose petals were seen as blessings or divine proof of the apparitions. They fell in Teresita's cell multiple times on the feast day of Saint Teresa of Avila and during the celebration of the Philippine Carmel Silver Jubilee. Even Auxiliary Bishop Oviar, who initially doubted Teresita's claims, is a private shower of petals, which convinced him of the truth behind her visions. As the phenomenon spread beyond the convent walls, petals were reported to have fallen in nearby gardens, local marketplaces, classrooms, and even on the streets of Sampaloc, Manila. The petals, believed by many to be a divine sign, became symbols of blessings and proof of the supernatural events occurring at Lipa, Carmel. The Manila Times first reported the phenomenon on November 17, 1948, with Society editor Jim Austria providing a dramatic first-person account. Austria's report described the striking contrast between the convent's somber atmosphere and the delicate petals falling from the sky, likening it to a scene from an exotic faraway land. The first public report by Jim Austria in the Manila Times opened the floodgates for visitors. Among the early witnesses were prominent figures like Aurora Quezon, the former First Lady of the Philippines, and high-ranking officials such as the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the Secretary of Agriculture, and the Director of the Philippine Relief and Trade Rehabilitation Administration. These notable individuals, alongside elite Catholics from Manila, were among the first to witness the showers and spread word of the events further. Beyond the political and social elite, the phenomenon drew people from all walks of life: students, families, aid workers, parish groups, and civic organizations traveled from various parts of the Philippines, including distant regions like the Visayas. The convent grounds sometimes hosted crowds as large as 30,000, all gathered to see the miraculous petals for themselves. Accounts of the petal showers varied. Sometimes, only a few petals would drift gently to the ground, while at other times, they would fall in a deluge, continuing for up to half an hour. Witnesses noted the petals' colors, primarily pink but occasionally white, and the accompanying fragrances of roses, lilies or azucenas, and ilang-ilang. The miraculous showers of petals were not just a visual spectacle. They were also believed to be imbued with divine power, leading to numerous stories of miracles and Many witnesses reported miraculous healings associated with the petals. People claimed that drinking the water infused with the petal or directly from the Carmelite cisterns cured various ailments. Others reported that applying a petal to wounds resulted in rapid healing. These stories spread quickly, adding to the belief in the supernatural nature of the petals. One notable account involved a person who experienced severe physical pain and was healed after coming into contact with the petal. Another story spoke of a child with a debilitating illness who recovered after a family member brought home a petal. Such tales were common and contributed to the growing legend of the miraculous petals. In addition to physical healings, many experienced profound spiritual transformations. Skeptics reported sudden conversions, and those struggling with their faith found renewed strength and belief. The petals became symbols of hope and divine intervention, reinforcing the faith of many who visited Lipa. Some petals were said to bear holy images, such as the face of Christ, the crucifixion, the Madonna and Child, the Last Supper, and various saints. These effigies, much like the legendary Shroud of Turin or Veronica's veil, were considered divine imprints left on the petals. Witnesses who saw these images described them as extraordinary, further convincing many of the miraculous nature of the events at Lipa. Dr. Eduardo Quisumbing, a renowned botanist, embarked on a mission to identify the rose petals that had miraculously fallen in Lipa. He noted the variety of rose flora in the town, whose names reflected the Philippines' rich colonial history. These included the Escarlatang Pula, a mix of Spanish and Tagalog for red, the Escarlatang Puti being Tagalog for white, and the Helen Gold, an American variety, among others. Dr. Quisumbing concluded that the petals showered in Lipa closely resembled those of the Escarlatang Pula and Hakiminot varieties.
The shower of petals could have but two origins, namely heavenly or earthly. Of the heavenly, the petals could not have come from any of the heavenly bodies around the earth. The nearest to earth is the moon. Scientifically and more specifically botanically, origin from the moon is impossible and out of the question. Of the earthly origin, the petals could have a foreign origin or a local origin. That the petals might have come from France or Greece is fantastic, as scientifically, this is impossible. One has to consider the various atmospheric factors like distance, direction, and velocity of the wind at the time of the showers and other weather factors. That the petals might have come from the vicinity of Manila, giving an example, and dropped in such limited space, despite the wind and other weather factors, is impossible, scientifically speaking. The shower, fall, or discovery of the petals within the convent is beyond me to explain. That some of the showering or appearance of the petals are coincident with the apparition of the Blessed Virgin is not for me to explain. I was terribly disappointed that I had not witnessed the showering of the petals during my visit to Lipa on November 29, 1948.
While his conclusion might seem humorous, it carried a deeper significance. Dr. Quisumbing emphasized the importance of rigorously testing supernatural claims to eliminate all possible scientific explanations. Only then, if the phenomenon remained unexplained, could it be considered a potential miracle. His approach provided a counterpoint to the sensational coverage by elite actors and media of the time, reminding people that the materiality of the petals and their significance needed sober and sound investigation. Dr. Quisumbing's skepticism wasn't meant to debunk but to pave the way for genuine belief. For many who witnessed the showering petals, skepticism was a means of protecting against hoaxes and foreign influences, ultimately serving as a pathway to true belief in the miraculous events of Lipa. Mrs. Milan was once a Carmelite sister in Lipa, responsible for taking care of visitors and procuring provisions for the cloistered community present during the 1948 miracles. She accompanied Teresita Castillo to the University of Santo Tomas Hospital in Manila when Teresita was interviewed about the apparitions. Mrs. Milan left the sisterhood in 1950s due to health issues and fell in love with Mr. Milan, who now stood with a demeanor that embodied kabarakuhan, a Batangueño term for a mix of brazen bravery and fearless masculinity. Mr. Milan, who initially doubted the miraculous events, was a skeptic and a heavy drinker. His mother, a devout woman, frequently visited the Carmelites, praying for his transformation. When the shower of petals began, she urged him to visit the Carmel. Convinced that the nuns were staging the miracle to deceive people, Mr. Milan decided to expose the alleged fraud. He borrowed a camera to catch the nuns in the act of throwing petals. Determined, he inspected the convent's windows and found them all closed except one. Climbing an avocado tree to get a better view, he waited silent. As people started shouting about the shower, he saw a petal descending from above, not from the window. Despite the windy conditions, the petal floated straight down. This sight defying all logical explanations. It led him to believe it was indeed the Blessed Virgin causing the phenomenon. Mr. Milan's journey from skepticism to belief mirrors the process used by church commissions investigating miracles. These commissions exhaust all reasonable explanations before considering the supernatural. While the church's initial investigation did not rule in favor of the miraculous, rumors persisted that the nuns had used an industrial-sized blower to stage the showers, adding another layer of intrigue to the story. In both Mr. Milan's personal experience and the church investigative approach, the miraculous nature of the petals becomes evident not through ordinary appearances, but through the extraordinary and unreasonable circumstances that defy simple explanation. For Mr. Milan, this truth was embodied by the Blessed Virgin, while for the Church, it remains a complex interplay of faith, skepticism, and the search for the supernatural. The debate over the origin of the miraculous petals in Lipa has seen its fair share of skepticism. Comments about the alleged use of blowers to create the showers abound. Meli Quizon, a Lipa native instrumental in reopening the case in 1980s, recounted how the nuns were bewildered by the accusation. They thought the investigators were referring to a hip-hip, a small bamboo tube used for stoking fires. Imagining the nuns on the roof blowing through these tubes to create the showers, this image was laughably implausible. Many, like Mr. Milan, concluded that it was impossible for the nuns to have generated the petals flight pattern. Others argued that the blower would have been too noisy and large to go unnoticed. And importantly, there was no electricity in Lipa at that time. These arguments reinforced the belief that the petals' origin was indeed miraculous. The petals were considered miraculous not only because they defied natural laws, but also because some were said to bear holy images. In Christian iconology, these images are described as akeropoietos, which means not made by hand. Walter Benjamin, a notable cultural critic, noted that photography, like the ancient concept of akeropoietos, frees the hand from the most important artistic functions. The effigies on the petals appeared much like photographic negatives, visible through contrasts of light and shadow, without any damage to the petals' structure, except for rare occasions when the petals could be examined in person. Photography became essential for their propagation, allowing people to view these miraculous images. The relationship between the effigy-bearing petals and photography highlighted the blend of ancient belief and modern technology. This shared structure of phenomenality made it difficult to consider the petals without imagining other artifacts produced by mechanical means, even if it ultimately disavows any causal connection. In conclusion, the Lipa petals' miraculous nature was affirmed through testimonies and the implausibility of alternative explanations. The ongoing debate over their origin and the divine images they bore continues to fascinate and inspire, bridging the gap between faith and reason. As the miraculous events at Lipa Carmel continued to draw attention and devotion, the Catholic Church began to scrutinize the claims more closely. The widespread reports of the showers of rose petals, miraculous healings, and the apparitions of Mary Mediatrix prompted the Church to investigate these occurrences thoroughly. Despite the growing public belief in the supernatural nature of these events, the Church ultimately labeled them as not true and took significant steps to suppress further discussion and devotion. In response to the burgeoning public interest and the mounting reports of miracles, the Church established a commission to investigate the events at Lipa. This commission, composed of bishops and other church officials, conducted a detailed examination of the claims, interviewing witnesses, and scrutinizing the evidence presented. The goal was to determine whether the events could be authenticated as genuine supernatural occurrences or dismissed as natural phenomena or fabrications. In 1951, after extensive investigation, the church issued a negative decree regarding the apparitions and miracles at Lipa. The commission concluded that there was no evidence to support the supernatural nature of the events. The official statement declared that the apparitions and the showers of rose petals were not of divine origin. This decree aimed to curtail the growing devotion and prevent the spread of what the church considered to be unfounded beliefs. This period was especially harrowing for Teresita Castillo, whose experiences were at the center of the inquiry. The section of her testimony describing this investigation is brief but filled with emotional intensity, reflecting the profound impact it had on her. Teresita was brought to the hospital of the University of Santo Tomas in Manila, where she faced intense questioning by a psychiatrist and a Dominican psychologist, Reverend Father Blas. These sessions were described as relentless and intimidating. Father Blas introduced himself as the devil's advocate, making it clear that his role was to challenge her claims vigorously. The atmosphere during these interrogations was hostile, and Teresita felt a deep sense of fear and anxiety. At one point during the questioning, Father Blas demanded that Teresita sign a statement admitting that the apparitions were merely products of her imagination. Teresita refused to comply, which angered Father Blas. The following day, when she was summoned back, Teresita remained resolute in her refusal. This led to a notorious incident where Father Blas, in a fit of rage, threw a crystal ashtray at her. Teresita managed to dodge it, and the ashtray shattered against the wall. Father Blas then crumpled the document and threw it into the garbage, storming out of the room. After the investigation concluded and the negative verdict was released, Teresita voluntarily left the Carmel upon the recommendation of Mamer, the Mother Superior. Mamer advised her that it was better to leave voluntarily, as she would be asked to leave regardless, but resignation would at least leave open the possibility of returning, a possibility that never materialized. Upon returning to her parents' home in Tanawan, Teresita sought to inform the Papal Nuncio of her departure from the convent. She visited His Excellency Monsignor Vagnosi, but the meeting was far from cordial. The nuncio, upon seeing her, angrily shouted, "Get out of my house, you little devil." Teresita, shaken and weak, tried to kneel for his blessing, but he refused and continued to shout at her until she left. This harsh rejection left her questioning why she was being blamed for the apparitions, which she had neither desired nor fabricated. The investigation left Teresita deeply scarred. She described the fear she felt during her interrogation by the psychologist, stating she was even more terrified than when she first saw the devil's face. The hostility from church authorities, who she felt should have been her protectors, compounded her sense of isolation and betrayal. This fear extended beyond the investigation, leaving her wary of priests and church officials. Within the convent, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The once celebrated events became taboo subjects. The nuns were instructed to destroy any physical evidence related to the apparitions, including the rose petals. Devotional items such as statues and images of Mary Mediatrix were hidden or removed. The Mother Prioress and other key figures who had supported Teresita faced pressure to conform to the church's decree. Externally, the church sought to discredit the events through public statements and sermons. Church leaders preached that there was no truth to the miracles, urging the faithful to cease their pilgrimages to Lipa and discontinue their devotion to Mary Mediatrix. The images of Mary that had become central to the devotions was ordered to be removed, and the faithful were discouraged from believing in the reported miracles. The church suppression efforts extend beyond the convent walls. Devotees who had experienced or believed in the miracles faced a difficult choice: adhere to the church's decree or continue their private devotion at the risk of ecclesiastical censure. Many, particularly those who had witnessed the events or experienced miracles firsthand, struggled with the church's stance but ultimately complied to avoid spiritual consequences. Following the negative decree, the church took strict measures to suppress further discussion and devotion in the events at Lipa. The Carmelite nuns, including Teresita Castillo and those who supported her, were ordered to remain silent about the apparitions and the miraculous petals. They were warned that continuing to speak about these events or promoting devotion to Mary Mediatrix would be considered a grave sin, risking severe spiritual and ecclesiastical consequences. Almost 30 years after the church's negative decree on Lipa apparitions, the case found new life thanks to the persistent efforts of Francisco Di Chanco, affectionately known as Ka Paco, as a young architecture student in Manila during the 1948 events. Ka Paco had visited the Lipa Carmel Monastery several times but never witnessed the miraculous showers himself. Initially, he maintained a neutral stance regarding the apparitions and the showers of petals, neither dismissing them nor fully believing in them. The turning point for Ka Paco came in 1975 following the death of Mother Albert, a former prioress of Lipa Carmel. Mother Albert had served as prioress for 9 years, starting in 1958, and had played a significant role in the monastery's development. After her tenure in Lipa, she helped found the Carmelite Monastery in San Pablo, Laguna, where Ka Paco lived. When she passed away, Ka Paco asked a Carmelite sister if there were any religious objects left behind by Mother Albert. He was given a rose petal encased in plastic with a note indicating it was from the 1949 shower. This moment rekindled Ka Paco's interest in the Lipa events. Intrigued by the petal and seeking the truth, Ka Paco began to inquire about the Lipa events from various Carmelite sisters. Initially met with silence, his persistence eventually paid off when he found a former Carmelite nun willing to share her experiences from the time of the apparitions and showers. This conversation ignited an epic quest to reopen the case, involving numerous religious and lay people both in the Philippines and abroad. Ka Paco meticulously documented his efforts in a diary detailing every meeting, letter, and piece of evidence related to the Lipa apparitions from 1982. This diary serves as a counterpoint to Teresita's personal testimony, providing insight into the bureaucratic and social maneuvers required to bring the case back into the public and ecclesiastical spotlight. Throughout his pursuit, Ka Paco learned to navigate the complex channels of the Catholic hierarchy. He sought the counsel of sympathetic local bishops and used their support to gain access to higher authorities. For those less inclined to reopen the case, he strategically provided them opportunities to defer and mutter up the chain of command, even reaching out to the apostolic delegate from the Vatican. In addition to his behind-the-scenes efforts, Ka Paco also created a public face for his mission. He founded the Marian Research Center, or MRC, as a hub for correspondence and evidence collection. One of its projects was a poll to gauge interest and belief in the Lipa apparitions. He engaged with the press to craft and control the narrative, ensuring that the story of Mary's apparitions remained in the public. Despite his dedication, Ka Paco faced significant personal and spiritual challenges. His diary recounts the ordeal of his adoptive grandson, John Paul, who suffered from an aggressive cancer. This personal trial nearly led Ka Paco to abandon his work, but he persevered, believing that his suffering was a form of purification that John Paul's spirit could assist from heaven. The revival of the Lipa case in 1980s and 1990s was marked by a delicate balance between secrecy and exposure. Key interventions and careful management of public discourse played crucial roles in rekindling interest and support. By 1988, the MRC had garnered enough support to prompt Archbishop Mariano Gaviola of Lipa to reconsider the case. Although Gaviola initially vacillated on reopening the investigation, he eventually consented to the public exposition of the original image of Mary Mediatrix on the occasion of the death of Sister Alphonse, a nun who had witnessed the petals. The efforts of Ka Paco and his supporters led to a significant moment in 1990 when Archbishop Gaviola allowed the public display of the original statue of Mary Mediatrix. This event marked a turning point, symbolizing a cautious yet hopeful step towards recognizing the miraculous events of Lipa. In 2009, Archbishop Ramon Arguelles, the new Archbishop of Lipa, issued a statement reversing the 1951 decree, allowing the public veneration of Mary Mediatrix and establishing a new commission to review the documents and investigate further. Although Arguelles later clarified that this reversal did not imply official recognition of the supernatural nature of the apparitions, it nonetheless rekindled hope among the devotees. The story of the Lipa apparitions and the miraculous shower of rose petals is more than just a historical event. It is a testament to the profound faith and spiritual resilience that characterize Filipino Catholicism. From the serene sacred moments of divine encounter to the intense scrutiny and controversy that followed, the events at Lipa continue to inspire awe and devotion. Even today, the tale of Teresita Castillo and the divine messages she received resonates deeply within the hearts of the faithful. It challenges us to reflect on the nature of faith, the mysteries that transcend human understanding, and the enduring power of hope and belief. Teresita Castillo's unwavering faith, despite relentless questioning and dismissal, invites us to ponder the strength and resilience of personal belief. Her experiences challenge us to consider how we too respond when our convictions are tested. In a world often defined by tangible evidence and rational explanations, the story of Lipa reminds us of the unseen and the unexplainable, urging us to hold space for mystery and wonder. The Church's initial suppression of the Lipa events highlights the tension between institutional authority and individual spiritual experiences. It forces us to ask, how do we reconcile the structures of faith with the spontaneous, often inexplicable nature of divine encounters? The persistence of belief among the faithful, even when faced with official denial, speaks to a deeper truth that faith often thrives in the margins, in whispered prayers and quiet acts of devotion. Reflecting on the Lipa apparitions, we see a narrative that transcends the specifics of time and place, touching on universal themes of hope, resilience, and the quest for meaning. It challenges us to look beyond the surface, to embrace the complexities of belief, and to acknowledge the sacred within the ordinary. In this story, we find a powerful reminder that true faith endures not because it is always affirmed, but because it finds strength even in the face of doubt and denial. As we contemplate the legacy of Lipa, we are called to a deeper reflection on our own spiritual journeys. Let us be inspired by the unwavering faith of those who came before us, and let us carry forward the light of belief, even when it flickers in the winds of skepticism. For in the end, it is the enduring faith, this steadfast belief in the face of adversity, that truly connects us to the divine and to one another. This episode is inspired by the book Mother Figured, Marian Apparitions and the Making of a Filipino Universal by Deirdre de la Cruz. Please note that the views expressed in this podcast are for educational and entertainment purposes and do not reflect official church positions. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite listening platform. Remember, the truth is out there, sometimes in the most unexpected places. Stay weird, stay curious, and stay tuned for more on LilWeird Podcast. Thanks for listening.